This is the bike that Ryan Villopoto clinched the AMA National Motocross Championship on. This is the bike Ryan Villopoto raced in leading Team USA to victory in the Motocross of Nations. And this is the bike that Ryan Villopoto will use to defend his AMA Supercross Series Championship in 2012.
Greg, for one, I want to thank you for taking the time to bring out the new KX. Pretty amazing machine. You guys have made a lot of adjustments and a lot of modifications to it as far as cosmetics, rider comfort, and stuff like that. But there's three main areas that I'd like you to talk about. One being the handlebars, the other the fuel injection mapping, and the foot peg. But let's start with the handlebars.
Okay, so again, one of the features, the biggest features about this bike is adjustability. So the new handlebar triple clamp allows you to put the handlebars in 4 different positions. So you've got 2 holes in the rear, and there's 2 additional holes in the front. And just by rotating these mounts, you can change the bar position. So it gives you 4 options right off the showroom floor, 4 options for bar positions.
Yeah, because I remember back in the day, Dave Thorpe was one of the biggest guys back at GPs, and when he was riding for Honda, they had the mounts way forward and the handlebars laid way back. And when I first looked at it, it kind of freaked me out because you don't like having your handlebars way in front of your forks. But when you angle them back and you do the different, modifications, that's good for somebody like myself that's long body, or someone smaller like a girl that wants to get the bars back to her, or even somebody small like Jeff Ward back in the day. He's still small, but he was small back when I raced against him. Our 2 different body positions are completely different. Now next, tell me exactly what is this for? We're talking fuel injection here, which is new for me when it comes to bikes. So what does this do?
So this is a coupler right here. So basically, this has 3 different maps in it. Okay, and so very, very simply, you can pull that off. You have different couplers. You have this is the white coupler. By clipping that in, just like that, putting it back in place.
And basically
change the power characteristics of the bike, just like that, with no additional tools.
So you have 3. We have a black, a green, and a white. For instance, without getting too technical, where would I use the white? A Supercross short setting, a sand, long pulls. Where would that go?
So a white setting is a soft terrain. So it's designed for loose terrain. When you want more power, it gives you a lot more power, a lot more hit,
stuff like that.
Okay. So the green would be more for just a standard intermediate, middle of the road type track. The black coupler would be more for like a hard terrain, a real hard pack terrain, so it's not as explosive. The wheel doesn't just spin all the time, so you have 3 different options. So you can drop these in your toolbox. You saw how quickly, like within 20 seconds, you can change the power characteristics.
Okay, now I'm one of the people that are blessed or cursed with long body, short legs, so it might not be as important, but down here, I really love this option that you can move the foot pegs up and down.
Yeah, as do I. I'm 6'3.5", so I like this option too. You're able to move these foot pegs down by 5 millimeters. And so it's the first KX, the first dirt bike that has this option. So this is kind of a road race thing. We're the first ones to bring it to the dirt. So it definitely gives a whole nother dimension, giving you a little more space and adjustability.
Greg, over the years, riding 250s, 450s, 125s, all the different stuff, one of the biggest problems is getting out of the gate. I've always said there's 2 races, from the gate to the first turn, from the first turn to the finish. Obviously, if you get the first one down, the second one's a lot easier. Kawasaki has something new as well to help a guy out. Can you tell us a little bit about the launch device?
Yeah, first for a motocross production bike is a launch control. So what this means is it'll help you off the gate. You press this button, you hold it for about 2 or 3 seconds. The light will come on. That'll show that it's engaged. That changes the power so that off the gate, off a concrete start or a slippery start, you can hold the bike wide open and drop the clutch. You don't have to be as controlled and really think about keeping the traction to the ground. It'll automatically do it for you. And what's good about this system is it automatically turns off. As soon as you go into 3rd gear, it'll turn itself off and go right back to stock.
Did you hear that? Fuel injection, no petcock. So you never have to worry about, which I've done, taking off with your gas off. First kick. lot of times when I started testing with Japanese manufacturers, they say, what's your first impression? And I have to say my first impression is this thing is phenomenal. You know, as far as, it doesn't feel like a heavy 4-stroke, you know, I mean, it feels light like a 250F, but it has the power when you really gun it. And what I found in previous 450s that I've ridden is that you have to ride in the first like 15% of the throttle. This I can come through, and if I want the power, whenever I go full throttle, it's got plenty of power, but it's not overbearing, you know, on the first 10%. So really, really nice. But I'd like to make some changes just because, like I said, being bigger, I want to do both changes. I want to move the bars up. Okay. I want to drop the pegs down, and then seeing as how we're on the dang vet track at Paula because the big track was so muddy. Yeah. I want to take the biggest change. I want to go to the most mellow power to see so I can feel a big change. I don't want to make a small change. So about how long do you think that'll take to do bars, pegs, and mapping?
I'd say within 10-15 minutes we'll get you back out on the track pretty quick.
Can you give me 20? I'm old, I need to rest.
Yeah, that's no problem. Let's make it 25.
There we go.
All right. Let's pick up this side off, you want to check it out.
It's so funny, get on this. You know, as I said to Greg, whenever you rode something new with a Japanese manufacturer, they would come to you and say in broken English, what's your first impression? And obviously the first impression of a brand new bike is unreal. But let me break it down a little bit for you. When it comes to the power, we have the most powerful mapping system in it. So for a vet track out here at Paula, it's pretty aggressive off the corners. Not to the point to where I feel out of control or anything like that, but I think that with the softer power curve, I can be a little more aggressive through the corners. I can give it a little bit more throttle, and I think it'll make me faster as I roll through these tight turns because it's very short straightaways and very small turns, unlike the Pro Track, but it's going to take a little while before it gets broken in. To break down the power a little bit more, I was really impressed with the harmonics of the motor. You get on some 4-strokes and they're just beasts. It's just tons of torque, tons of horsepower because that's what a 450 is known for. But when you ride this around, when you're not on it really hard, it almost has a feel of a 250F, which some people might say, well, that's bad. I disagree. Because it feels light, it feels agile when it comes to how it revs up and how the power comes down. So a very, very forgiving power band. I'm really anxious to see what it's like with the softer curve. Suspension. It's fresh out of the box. We didn't set the sag for me. Everything feels fine. Very forgiving. For the vet track, once again, I'm riding so slow at this point that I need to ride it more aggressive. The harder you ride it, the better it feels. The harder I crash into jumps, the more it absorbs it. When it comes to suspension back and forth, balance with the steering. You know, Yamaha in the past always had unbelievable steering just because of the geometry of it. When I was at Honda, it didn't track really well. That was one of the weak points. It was great on soft tracks, but hard slick tracks, we struggled a little bit trying to get the weight to the front end. Kawasaki, on the other hand, was always good. And now on this new KX450, I feel that when I'm coming through the corners, very easy to pick a line, stay in the line. If I want to cut out of a berm early, the front wheel tracks for me. When I start to apply power, it doesn't transfer a bunch of weight back and either put it into a push or come around. So the balance of the suspension is great. Rear suspension, I haven't tested it that much yet because that track is pretty smooth and just basic doubles and stuff like that. So everything that I've felt to this point is awesome. Now, I look at this bike and I go, what else can you do to it? Well, for me, being over 200 pounds, that's being kind, and being 6'1", I have to make some changes so it fits my riding style. So we're moving the bars forward to the forward mount and rocking them back a little bit, so it's going to give me more rider position, and also I'm lowering the foot pegs to the max ability to give myself a little bit more room, operator room, so I'm not so cramped up like this. I can open up my riding position a little bit more, especially with me being an older guy. Any little bit to help me get to my feet, that little bit will help me quite a bit for when I'm wanting to go from sitting to standing. So I'm really anxious to see how these changes when it comes to rider comfort feel. All right, we're making some changes. Everybody runs stuff a little bit different. The trend nowadays is to seem to run the levers a lot higher. I myself, for one, I can't do it because my wrist being fused, there's a certain place I got to have my front brakes. So if people make comments, and some of them will on the message boards about how old school I am about keeping the levers down, is I keep them there so I can get at the brake. Otherwise, I have to drop my elbow when I brake, and and it puts pressure on my wrist. The other thing is I got a long torso, so I sit up quite a bit higher than the average guy. So I like my levers to be pretty much straight out. I don't like to have to raise my hand up to get to them, and I don't want to have to reach forward. So I want my hand where I put it flat, and then I can get to my clutch and to my brake. The other thing that I like to do is I like to make sure that I slide the levers in enough, so I use a longer motion when it comes to letting my clutch in and out. The further out you have your lever, the tighter it is, the shorter your throw is, so it's going to make it more like a toggle switch. The further in you put it, the smoother you can be when you're applying clutch, or when you're pulling clutch away from the machine when you're coming into the corner. When it comes to front brake, I pretty much like my finger right in the saddle, because with all the new brakes, especially the Nissan brakes, I've been a big fan of them for a long time. It's pretty much just one finger. If I do get into a panic situation, I'll go to two, but 99% of the time, all you need is one finger. These things, they'll stop on a dime and leave you some change. Let's go ride. Okay, Greg, I have to say, the three changes that we made, the bars, the ignition, and the pegs, it made it feel like a completely different bike. Going out there at first, I felt a little bit cramped. Now I find myself just a little bit stretched out. And when we put the bars forward, it also raises the bars up just a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, just a slight amount. As you can see, the triple clamp's at an angle, so as you move forward, the farther forward you move, the higher the bars will go. So, we could make some adjustments, put the bars, roll them back a little bit, make for some, compensate for that difference, but there is a little variation there.
Now, and some people might think when they get a bike, because most guys do, it doesn't matter if they're a beginner or whatever, I want the biggest power, the most power. And for myself, and I'm wanting to be smooth coming off the corners, going with the black box brought the curve down, but it didn't kill the power. It just seemed to mellow it out on that initial crack. But as soon as I got to 80 to 90%, it felt like all the power was there. Is that fact?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the power is still there. It is just more mellow, so it's a little more manageable. If you want to grab a handful and go for it, it's still there, but it doesn't have as much hit. So it is a lot better for people that want a little less hit, a little more mellow, a little more manageable power.
And then with the pegs, there's pros and cons to that. I remember back in the day when we get certain tracks, deep ruts, we always wanted to raise the pegs up. So you do put yourself, your ankles, you expose them to getting pulled off the pegs when you lower it, but it does give you a little more surface on the side of the bike. So for myself, I liked having the lower pegs, but for a shorter guy or even somebody that's running in the ruts, they might run them high, correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's just a difference of 5 millimeters, which isn't a lot, but you're right. In certain instances, you may want to go back and forth, raise them, lower them, depending on your riding style, the riding track, things like that. Because
what people might think, 5 millimeters, that's not going to make a big bit of difference. But for myself, I weigh as much as the bike itself. So if I can lower my center of gravity when I'm on the pegs 5 millimeters, that equates to a lot when it comes to jumping and cornering and stuff like that. All in all, it's been an awesome experience. So my big question is, how do I get one?
Well, you can at $83.99. That's a bargain, Rick. You know that with all the adjustability right off the floor, it's great. So visit your local Kawasaki dealer, check it out, and see what kind of deal you can make.
Thanks, appreciate that. But so they're in the dealers. If I want to go down and buy one right now, I can head to Orange County and pick one up.
That's correct. They're in dealerships now.
Go pick one up. You'll have a blast.